Welcome to Words of Wisdom from Kick-Ass Women.
Stories and advice about moving forward, punching through that glass ceiling, pushing harder, and blazing trails from women we really admire.
Hi, everyone. I'm Liz Brohan.
And I'm Mary Olivieri. Welcome to Words of Wisdom from Kick-Ass Women.
Yeah, let's talk about kick-ass women for a minute. Mary, when you think about kick-ass women who bet on themselves, you know, knowing that the odds were probably against them, who comes to mind?
J.K. Rowling is one. I love her story. I love that she was struggling, single mom, trying to find her way, sitting in coffee shops, writing books. I mean, come on, that's pretty cool. And obviously, because we're in Chicago, Oprah, she really fought against all odds. I think that she's pretty incredible for what she's achieved based on what she was faced with in coming up, especially in that career.
No doubt. Yeah. All right.
Those are two of mine.
No, those are two awesome kick-ass women for sure. And you don't have to be famous, to want to bet on yourself, or like our guest today, Anita Knotts, who bets on women. And guess what? Makes them successful in a very difficult industry for women, which is, finance, wealth management, and all of that. And Anita will be so exciting to hear your stories today. She is the founder of a very kick-ass foundation, Lotus Women's Institute.
Welcome, Anita. We're so glad to have you
yes,
here.
Thank you.
And Liz, are you saying I'm not famous?
Oh, and she's famous.
In certain
we'll
circles,
have to dig
right?
into that.
Well, with 30 years of wealth management experience, you should be famous because, I don't know, me and money, personally, I don't get it, right? But in addition to being the founder of Lotus Women's Institute, I'm going to read off of this because your credentials are so amazing. You were best known as a financial advisor, right? That you help clients navigate their financial lives. And you were, I think, right after the pandemic is when you started, right, Lotus Women's Institute. I'm going to define it as an organization dedicated to attracting, developing, and advancing women in financial services. Did I get that right?
You got it. Perfect.
Awesome.
Yes.
Well, we're really happy to have you. I should probably talk to you later before I go completely down the tube.
Don't let her get away.
But I think that what's really interesting is the idea of reinvention, right? And how we might reinvent ourselves. I went from an administrative assistant to a copywriter by accident to a creative director to, thanks to Liz, president of an advertising agency. So I do know a little bit about reinvention of self. But was reinvention a goal for you initially? Like, how did you decide to end up where you are right now? Like, what was that journey like?
Yeah. I don't know if I was intentional about reinventing myself as much as I go crazy when I feel like my potential is not being used to its fullest. It makes me absolutely insane.
Interesting.
And I've met a lot of women who feel the same way when they're in a situation where they know they could be doing more, when they know they've got more value to bring to the table, so to speak, but they're not in an environment that will allow for it.
I see.
It is really, it's a challenge. And some women, I shouldn't just say women, some people just say, okay, well, it is what it is. I'm just going to check the box. I'm going to show up at work. I'm going to collect my paycheck and I'm going to go home. Others, and I would put myself in this category, are like, no.
Yeah.
I'm not going to accept that. I'm here to do more. There's a higher calling for me. And that may have led to reinventing myself over the course of my career.
That is some advanced thinking. Where were you when you had that sort of thought?
I believe, if I were to be honest, that has really crept into my brain and only in the last 10 years. And so you think about it, I had a 30-year corporate career, as Mary read off my bio. And after that, when you're in a corporate career, a lot of people envision you a certain way, and then they end up putting you in that box. And then you start believing that that's all you're capable of doing. Once I became an entrepreneur and I launched my own business, this was just 4 years ago, then you start seeing yourself, oh, wow, I can be a visionary. I can be creative. I mean, who thinks of a person in finance as creative? But damn it, I'm creative. right? So
and I think we all have to be, right?
We have to be. We have to be.
How did you, so it sounds like you tapped into that by virtue of just trying, right?
Yes.
And for our listeners out there, in terms of being a kick-ass woman, are there any tips you could offer them in terms of how you were able to lean into that and go for it?
Yeah. I mean, keep in mind, I'm an immigrant, right? So I think, I shouldn't say every immigrant, but I think a lot of immigrant families are very risk averse because, like, my parents took the biggest risk of their lives coming here from the other side of the world.
Mm-hmm.
So they raised my brother and I to be, we were very protected and it was a conservative sort of upbringing. And that's fine when you're growing up, but then when you're coming into the workforce, it's, I found that it wasn't the best way to be as a woman of color. You've got to push yourself to take risks. You've got to step outside the comfort zone. You've got to just put yourself out there. And so my philosophy now is, unless the worst case scenario is death, you owe it to yourself to do it. Because there's no better place than this country to kind of just roll the dice, do it. If it doesn't work, you pivot and you go elsewhere. So that's sort of my thinking now, but I had to evolve to that.
Understood.
Yeah.
Understood.
I really loved the concept you were just talking about women of color and how there's some different thinking that needs to go behind being successful in whatever you choose to do. And we all hear that really means you have to try harder. Do you think that's still prevalent?
Yeah, I definitely felt like I had to outwork everybody in the room. But let me tell you, I have a different perspective on it. And this is what I tell a lot of Black and brown women. We need to stop looking at ourselves as, oh my God, I'm the only person in the room that looks like this. Oh, I'm the only this. I'm the only that. Yes, that is the case. But then start looking at it as, I get to be the only person who looks like this. Leverage the fact that who wants to be like the person sitting next to them?
Nice.
You want to be the only you in the room, right? So that right there, even before you open your mouth, you're unique. You're bringing something else to the table. So when we reframe that in our own mind, we start contributing. And then that's what hopefully people are looking at is the contribution.
The contribution, not
right.
Can you share any stories where you were the only one of the kind in the room?
Yeah.
And having to overcome bias or anything within the room, I think that's going to be really important for people to hear. Like, how do you overcome the bias in the room?
I mean, it's obscene the number of times, right? Because you think about it, financial services and especially wealth management. I had the double whammy. I was not only a woman, I was a person of color. So you think about it, sitting across a white male to tell him how to invest his millions. How do you think that's going to go over? Right. So did I have an obscene amount of confidence? Yes and no. I had to overcome a lot. I had to convince myself that I belonged at that table. So that was definitely one of them. Even early on in my career, I really set out to differentiate myself from everybody else in whatever role I was at. If I was a sales assistant, then I wanted to be the best sales assistant. If I was an advisor, I wanted to be the best advisor. So one of the things is, if there's a bunch of brokers, as we call them back in the days, focused on a research meeting, for example, research meeting would start very early in the morning at 6:30. That was before anybody else came in. It was like an old boys club that back in the day when they allowed smoking in the office, in the building.
Oh, the good old days.
Oh, the good old days, yeah. All of them sitting around a boardroom table smoking cigarettes. And here I come with my little backpack. And I sit down and they're all looking at me like, what are you doing here? Almost like I was interrupting a frat party of sorts. It's like, well, I'm here to learn. I want to hear what the research analysts have to say, and then the chuckles started and, oh, look, isn't she cute? She wants to learn. Things like that. That basically it was the rest of my career. And you just have to, listen, you've got two choices. Just, be offended, be pissed off, go home and cry, which don't get me wrong, I did a few times. And then over the course of time, you're just kind of like, yeah, well, it's kind of part and parcel of what I'm doing. But if we want to set out to be change makers, trust me, that is the path. You just blow right through it.
So how did you get your voice to break out? did you take that research and find insights that the frat guys, weren't really caring about? What was it that kind of, sparked your differentiation?
Yeah. You know what I found? You got to be able to laugh at yourself. You got to be able to, and again, it's one of those things that I learned over time. I'm a pretty intense individual, and I always have been. From the time I emerged from the womb, I am a tightly wound, intentional
Yes.
type A personality. But when you start, I want to be very careful about how I say this because not everybody deserves grace. But when you say, look, they're just not used to seeing somebody like me at the table, just engage in a conversation, engage in an everyday dialogue. Again, over time, I think I garnered respect for it instead of taking myself too seriously. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense.
Yeah.
And the whole idea of keeping a sense of humor, to try to lighten it a little bit is really great advice.
Yeah.
I probably started out with a lot of kind of self-deprecation, because my sense of humor hadn't evolved, and now I think I've stepped away from that and I just try to find the funny in the moment.
Exactly.
But I totally agree that it's a great strategy and it's a stress reliever.
Yes.
I think that I've learned about self-deprecation is one of the big tips when I would train folks to speak, right? So we had a team of young women and I wanted them to be powerful speakers.
Yeah.
And the one thing I had learned through years of doing it was if you get up there and you start with something that's a little self-deprecating, everybody feels like it's relatable, you know? And then you show your chops with your intelligence and your great thinking. But I don't think that's a bad way to go about it. I remember one time there was a picture of me on a screen in a conference. And just, how the monitors never are right.
Yeah.
I looked like that ad for bad sun damage face, right? and I looked at it and I thought, okay, let's start with that.
Yeah.
Sorry about the ad. That looks like I've had terrible sun damage, and then you had them with you.
Right.
Excuse me.
Right.
So I like the idea of bringing humor to the party.
Well, and I also think that all of those experiences, everything happens to us in life for a reason. And all of those experiences have informed my platform now. When I coach and mentor women, it's not from some academic textbook. It's from my own lived experience as a woman of color. And so none of those experiences were for naught. I'm using those to say, here's how I handled it. Maybe you wouldn't handle it exactly the same, but feel free to take what works for you.
Got it.
So the women that you're working with and mentoring today, how do they come to you and what are they like when they come to you initially and how do you see them evolve over time? Can you tell us a few stories about your successes with these women?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's absolutely some of the most rewarding work I've ever done. How they come to me is through various channels, but it does help to be in the workforce as I have for so many decades. It's like people that have known me for all of those years. Oh, I have somebody or I have a niece or I have, it's any number. Sometimes it's just through LinkedIn because I posted something and somebody found me. But the conversations often have to do with women who really struggle believing in themselves. And the interesting thing is, it's not just young women. Sometimes it's mid-career women. Sometimes it's, even older, senior level women who have to almost be given permission to believe in themselves. They need someone to just say, look at everything, look at the landscape you've traversed up until this point. Now tell me you can't do this.
I love that. I think that you're hitting on something really important, obviously imposter syndrome being part of it.
Yeah.
I was just speaking to a young woman the other day and she was like, there was a job posting and she didn't have all the credentials for the job.
Yep.
And I said, you need to go for it anyway, right? And I had a note here about you talking about that. Even if you're not there yet, go for it anyway. Isn't that, can you tell a little bit more about that? Is that maybe a coaching tip you give people who come to see you?
Yeah. I mean, it comes up often because I don't know if it was last year or the year before. Recently, there was a statistic that came out that said, men will apply for a role when they meet 60% of the qualifications.
Right.
I specifically, there's a few women I'm thinking of now, they've met 100% of the qualifications and they're like, well, I don't meet 125%, so I'm not going to apply. It is just, right? And one thing I say is, why would you ever take a job where you know how to do everything? Don't you want to learn?
Oh, that's a good tip.
Yes.
That's a good tip.
Why would you ever go for something that, so it's, again, challenging ourselves. It's okay to challenge ourselves. I also think the industry needs to change. We need to start hiring women based on their potential, not for their past experience, because we do that with men. We hire men. Oh, think about what he can do for the organization. Well, why can't we say that about the woman who's interviewing for the same role?
Great. Yep.
Right?
All right.
Well, that's a good tip even in an interview, right?
Yes.
If you get challenged, oh, well, you don't seem like you have that experience yet, but I have the potential
about the potential,
Correct.
the value you bring to the table.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
I've always been one of those people that, kind of naively just dives in.
Yeah.
So you always have been. She might have 25% of it just going for it.
I'm going to go do this. I'm going to dive in. And it works out sometimes and sometimes it doesn't, but you learn, right?
Yes.
So how do you coach the women that you're mentoring now? Are you a planner or are you a dive in girl?
Yeah. Actually, you just stated it beautifully. One of the things I say is that, look, you've got let's say there's a situation X in front of you and you're fearful of it, right? Got two choices. Don't do it. Actually, three choices. Don't do it is the first choice. Second is do it and fail. Third is do it and succeed. Option number one is the worst, to not do anything.
Yes.
Because if you go forward and succeed, well, there's a success. I would argue that if you go forward and fail, you're failing forward. You're still past today. You are still moving ahead. And as you start accumulating those experiences over time, that's how you build confidence. This is a statement I've made many, many times when I'm being interviewed. I am not self-confident because everybody tells me how great I am. I'm self-confident because I've made a lot of mistakes, done a lot of dumb things, and am like standing to talk about it, right? And so once you
you're not just standing to talk about it. You're standing in a place of incredible power and authority and knowledge. So.
Absolutely.
And using that to pass on to other women.
That's right. And when you turn around and you say, oh, I've done all of those things and I'm still here standing, that's where the confidence comes from. So you have to build that over time.
Well, you hit on something. You said it earlier and now in a slightly different way.
Mm-hmm.
I challenge anybody who's listening to sit down and write what they have accomplished so far.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Because sometimes we forget that, right? We forget how far we've come.
Right.
And so I like that idea of why don't you just sit down and take a look at everything you have achieved?
Yeah.
Right.
And then I often find confidence from that. Sometimes I think, oh, okay, whatever, I was this or I've done this.
Yeah.
But then when you sit down and really think about everything you've done, it changes something internally deep inside you, right?
Yes. It's actually one of the tips that I give women on the topic of imposter syndrome is take a moment, take a beat, and write down everything you've done up until this point. And I don't mean just professionally. Think about the things that women carry on a personal front. Good God. It could be a failed marriage. It could be a child who ran away from home. It could be addiction. It could be the death of a spouse, the death of a parent, sometimes, unfortunately, death of a child. And I'm not saying that husbands and fathers don't go through this too, but women do weather a lot. And oftentimes we put ourselves on the back burner when it comes to self-care. Mm-hmm. And, under the guise of being a martyr, which is that's a whole other podcast. We need to stop that as well, right? But when we think about, oh my gosh, I did all of that and I'm still here and I'm still pulling it together. And that in and of itself should be enough for you to say, oh, this is nothing.
Right. Bring that out front and center. And I don't want to sound negative, but I kind of also keep a list of I'm not going to do that again, just so that I can balance out how that accomplishment happened, because sometimes it happened because I learned from my own failure.
Correct.
Yeah. So I like to kind of keep a log of both.
Yes.
I think extrapolating that in terms of turning it into a positive, right? Or turning it into a sale, a sales point for yourself, right?
Yes.
And so, like you said, somebody might weather something like a divorce, right? and say you're sitting in an interview and they ask you, how do you handle conflict?
Yeah.
Don't forget that you went through a divorce, right?
That's right.
And I don't see any reason why you couldn't come right out and say, listen, I know how to navigate tricky relationships.
Yes. Yes.
I love that you're adding the personal history to the professional,
Yeah,
right?
and I think that's such a great point, Mary. Like, I think the pandemic changed a lot of that. We were all, even in the corporate world, we were so buttoned up and everything. Oh, got to keep that separate. Can't be talking about kids or blah, blah, blah. Well, guess what? Pandemic changed all of that. Personal is interwoven with the professional. And I'm not saying that there should still be professional boundaries, of course, right? You don't want to go in and say, well, guess what I did last night, right? But to say that, hey, you want proof of my resilience? Here it is.
Yeah.
I've traversed some pretty difficult things in my life. And a lot of people go through challenges. I've went through my fair share and I'm still here. And so I know how to navigate these things. And let me tell you, competency can be learned. Interpersonal skills, resilience, perseverance, I will take a candidate with those traits any day over things that I can teach them.
Exactly right. And I think one of the things that the younger generations, the millennials, the Gen Zers have really taught us in business is to have a better work-life balance. Because we never talked about work-life balance. We were at the office all the time and we just projected that our life was our work.
Yeah.
And now they're like, let's have a little bit of both.
Right.
You're hitting on something kind of back to you, right, Anita, in terms of the, like you say, Liz, back in the day, we'd stay at a job for 10, 20, 30 years, right? Generations who have since followed are looking for their opportunities. They're not feeling like I got to stay with that company.
Right.
When I remember hiring and looking for people who had 5 or more years of experience at one place on their resume.
Yeah.
You're just not going to find that anymore, right?
Yeah.
And so I think of you and your 30-year career and this pivot with Lotus. I think there's something to be said for looking for that opportunity and making sure you're taking it for a better life, right?
Yes. And you knew this topic was going to come up because of the field that I'm in, but being financially stable, there's no better reason why, because it's freedom for you. It's freedom to launch the business. It's freedom to leave a bad marriage. It's freedom to leave a bad boss, a bad job, right? And so many women don't think about that. If I have to read one more social media post about a mom who is scared to file for divorce because she doesn't have 2 pennies to rub together and he's got control of everything. And I'm not commenting on women. You can work, you cannot work outside the house. That's not the point I'm making. Even if you stay at home with the kids, God bless you, but you need to be a part of that conversation at home. Do not outsource financial security because you will pay the price at some point. Even if you have a great marriage, we tend to outlive our male spouses. So what happens if he drops dead of a heart attack and you don't know where you bank?
So since we've got you here, can you give us a couple of tips for maybe our younger listeners?
Yeah.
Where do you start building this financial independence?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, understand I break it down into 3 things. The financial literacy component, understanding the basics, terminology. What's a credit score? Why is it important? What is savings? What does it mean to have an emergency fund? The basics. Second, budget, right? It's the B word, budget. Most of my clients in my past, when I was an advisor, would think, oh God, here she comes. She's going to tell me to spend less. Budget is not that. Budget is knowledge. You would not make any big decision in life without knowledge or information. So think about that that's what a budget is. Well, you might.
We covered that.
Yeah. The third, and this is where women are just incredibly intimidated, is you must invest. You cannot save your way to long-term wealth. Investing is not a luxury. It is a necessity. And a lot of women don't want to hear that from me, but it is a fact.
It's scary.
It's scary. But guess what? I'm an insider saying it's not that difficult.
Okay, good.
It's not that difficult. The industry has done a great job intimidating women in underrepresented groups into thinking that, oh, you got to watch CNBC, you got to read the journal, you got to do. No, I'm here to tell you that's not the case.
Wow, those are 3 incredible tips. Incredible tips. When I think of budget, right, my father sat me down when I was 14 and with, the old green ledger paper, and taught me how to create a budget. When he passed away, my mother didn't know any of the things like you just said, where they banked, didn't know anything, never even created a budget. So I was taking what my father taught me and taught my mother how to create a budget. I think it's really important to hear that. And I don't care. I mean, my mother's 91 years old and she didn't even know how to go get her oil changed, you know?
Yeah.
Because Dad took care of all that.
Right.
I think it's so important to hear those 3 tips. I think it's really great. You got to empower yourself because without that financial independence, your choices disappear, right?
Yes.
So I think those are great tips.
And the thing is, we always talk about women's health, and it comes down to, are you eating well? Are you keeping your weight in check? Are you, seeing a therapist? Are you focused on being a spiritual person? And all of those things, don't get me wrong, they're all very important. But if you live to the ripe old age of 95 or whatever it's going to be, and you have no money to keep yourself healthy, to just the basics. I'm not talking about, going and sitting on a yacht in the Mediterranean. I'm talking about the fundamentals of like affording health care in this country.
Right.
You need capital. You need money. And so that is something that I think is missing. You cannot leave out the financial wellness and financial health when you talk about overall health for anybody, not just women.
Absolutely. I think what you've done today is you've given us all great information to bet on ourselves, right?
Absolutely.
And that's kind of where it starts.
Yes.
Just take her advice. Let's get it moving.
Yes.
And let's take care of ourselves financially.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
We should be all accountable for ourselves. We definitely have advocates in our lives, but we have to be our own advocate first.
Amen.
All right.
That's a good way to wrap this thing up. So we want to thank you for being here, Anita. I don't know about everybody else, but I certainly need the advice that you've offered to us. And if anybody is interested, and I think you should totally tune in, Anita has her own podcast called Women, Wealth, and Wisdom. I love the alliteration, so that's awesome. And how else can they reach you? Give us some more information.
Absolutely. So my website, lotuswomensinstitute.com. There's a contact me page. You can go there and shoot me a message. You can even just connect with me on LinkedIn. I know a lot of people use that as a mode of communication these days. You can message me there. I'm around. I'm on all social media platforms.
I'm telling you guys, hit her up. All right. I think it's a great idea. Thank you so much again for being here with us.
This was a pleasure. Thank you both.
Absolutely. We can't thank you enough for being with us today. This was such a great conversation.
This was
so
fun.
many great takeaways. That was awesome. We really appreciate. And very quickly, the other people I'm going to bet on is our sponsor, the Motion Agency. They are one of the nation's premier marketing communications firm, and they are the largest women-owned independent firms in Chicago. So please look them up. They're awesome.
That's right. And hey, don't forget, watch us. You can find us on YouTube, catch our podcast. You can go to our website to see all of our different episodes. That's at kick-ass-women.com. So until next time, have a great day.